Hey, tonight we're exploring the Fermi Paradox, that deep, unsettling question that hides in the night sky. The mystery of why a universe so full of stars can feel so empty of voices. You lie back and imagine it now, the black canvas stretched endlessly above you, scattered with cold silver lights, each one a sun with its own worlds circling in silence. The air feels still, the quiet seems almost deliberate, and you can't help but sense that something is missing. A universe this vast should feel crowded, yet it feels hollow, like a stage without its actors. You probably won't survive this world unchanged, but that's the point. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy quiet stories like this. And if you happen to still be awake after a while, leave a comment with your location and the time where you are, so we can see this strange, sleepless map of listeners together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your gaze lingers on the stars. At first they feel distant, but then something shifts. You start to notice their quiet rhythm, how each one pulses softly as if breathing with you. You wonder, if each of those stars has planets, if even a fraction of those planets have oceans, forests, winds, and skies like yours, then why haven't you heard from them? Why is it only you lying here under this ceiling of light? The silence of the sky is louder than it seems. For thousands of years, people have tilted their heads back just like this, whispering the same questions. Ancient priests tracked the constellations and tried to stitch gods into the gaps. Philosophers let their thoughts spiral outward, imagining other worlds, other beings, other minds. The scientist Carl Sagan once said, "The universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, it seems like an awful waste of space." That thought lingers now, like a low hum at the edge of hearing. Your mind drifts, picturing a civilization far away. Perhaps it flourishes under the glow of a twin sun. Maybe they walk on crystal plains or sail on oceans of methane. Their thoughts could be stranger than your dreams, yet familiar in their yearning. Do they look up at their own stars, asking the same question you're asking tonight? If they do, then the silence between you is not just empty, it's mutual. Science has a quiet way of heightening the eeriness. You learn that in your own Milky Way galaxy alone, there are estimated to be over 100 billion stars, and astronomers now believe that most of them have planets. That number is almost unbearable to imagine. If even a tiny fraction of those planets are like Earth, there could be millions of cradles for life, yet the night remains indifferent. You hear nothing, no signals, no shimmering proof, only stars, hanging like lanterns in an unreachable dark. An eerie fact comes to mind. The light you see from some of those stars is older than humanity itself. When the photons from Deneb, one of the brightest, left its surface, humans had not yet built the pyramids. Some light you see now is older than every story you've ever known, and in that time, across those vast centuries, not a single alien messenger has arrived. You think about how strange that is. The silence feels not accidental, but deliberate, almost as if the universe has chosen it. Researchers still wonder if you might be missing the message entirely. Perhaps aliens are talking, but their voices are carried in frequencies you can't hear, or patterns too subtle for your machines to notice.
Maybe you're like a butterfly landing on a radio antenna, wings brushing against signals without realizing they are there. The thought is unsettling, but it also makes you smile softly, because it means the mystery may not be empty at all. It may simply be hidden in plain sight. And then you let your mind wander into a reflection. What if this silence isn't about them at all, but about you? The stars, the question, the emptiness, they might be mirrors. You search the heavens for voices because deep down you're afraid of the silence within yourself. The paradox becomes not just about where they are, but about why you feel so small, so temporary, so eager to be less alone. The night deepens, and you keep watching, letting the quiet grow thicker around you. The stars don't blink answers, but they invite you deeper. You realize this paradox is not something to solve quickly, but to sit with, like a koan, a riddle with no ending. You feel the silence settle into you, not heavy, but strangely soothing, like a lullaby woven from questions.
You picture a quiet dining hall in Los Alamos, New Mexico, the clatter of dishes and the hum of muted conversation. The year is 1950, and among the men gathered is a physicist named Enrico Fermi. He is known for quick wit and sharper equations, but that day, his words are disarmingly simple. As colleagues trade jokes about flying saucers, he pauses, frowns, and asks, "Where is everybody?" The table grows still, and though the laughter resumes a moment later, his question has already escaped into the world, never to be put back. You feel it now, hanging like a whisper above the decades, echoing into your own ears tonight. That question is not just about aliens, it is about probability. You know enough to see the numbers. A galaxy with billions of stars, planets beyond counting, endless time for life to emerge. By all logic, it should be teeming. Yet when you search, when radio telescopes sweep the dark, when you aim your curiosity outward, you find only quiet. It is as if the universe is a grand theater, the stage lights blazing, yet the actors have never arrived. The quiet stretches. You imagine Fermi himself glancing out at the desert horizon after that lunch, the sun beating down on the mesas. Did he feel a trace of dread? Or was it just curiosity, pure and crystalline? You wonder about his expression, the calm of someone who knows that even a small question can unfold into a labyrinth of possibilities. Tonight, you step into that labyrinth with him. It is almost eerie to think how quickly the paradox took root. Within years, scientists and dreamers alike began sketching answers. Some suggested that advanced civilizations destroy themselves before they can travel far. Others imagined that life is rare, or that intelligent beings are deliberately avoiding contact. The paradox is not just one mystery, but a kaleidoscope of them, each fragment reflecting a different kind of unease. You close your eyes for a moment, hearing the silence between stars. It doesn't feel accidental anymore. You recall that radio waves, our earliest attempts to speak across the void, have been leaking into space for just over a century. That's barely a blink. If alien ears exist, they might hear our signals not for thousands of years, or not at all. Maybe you're the only one listening at the moment, perched at the edge of infinity, waiting for a call that may never come. An odd, unsettling fact drifts into your mind. The Voyager 1 spacecraft, carrying a golden record of sounds and greetings from Earth, has already slipped beyond the boundary of the solar system. It drifts now in the interstellar dark, a fragile message in a bottle. Yet even this hopeful gesture is wrapped in futility. Space is too wide, the distances too cruel. Voyager may float for 1 billion years and never be noticed. The thought leaves a chill in you, like wind through an empty corridor. And still, Fermi's question lingers. Where is everybody? It is a question that both haunts and comforts. If they are not here, perhaps it means humanity is rare, precious, the first voice in a silent hall. Or perhaps it means others once sang and fell silent, and you walk now through the aftermath of countless vanished civilizations. Which is worse? You cannot decide. Researchers still debate whether the paradox is even real. Some say it is born only of impatience, that the universe is young and life has plenty of time to appear. Others whisper about more unsettling possibilities, that we are being watched, quarantined, or tested, like children in a classroom where the teacher never speaks. These thoughts feel like soft shadows moving at the edge of your vision, never quite becoming solid, yet impossible to dismiss. You breathe slowly, letting the question settle deeper. There is no rush. Fermi did not give an answer, only a doorway, and you, tonight, step through it. You walk into the silence with open eyes, aware that the question itself is larger than any reply. You sense that perhaps this is why the paradox endures, not to be solved, but to remind you of the enormity of what you don't know. Your body feels heavier, but your thoughts float higher, drifting through the long corridors of possibility. Fermi's quiet voice seems to follow you. Where is everybody? And the night sky, vast and indifferent, offers nothing in return. You drift further into the thought, letting the weight of numbers unfold around you. The universe is not just wide, it is overflowing. You imagine yourself standing on a shoreline, the sand cool beneath your feet. Each grain represents a star, and you scoop up a handful, watching them spill through your fingers. Yet the stars in your hand are nothing compared to the countless others stretching beyond the horizon. Astronomers estimate there may be 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Within each one, billions of stars burn, many with planets circling faithfully around them. If even a fraction of those planets cradle oceans, soil, or skies, then the odds of life multiply into figures too large for the mind to hold. It is a comforting thought, at first, that you are part of a cosmos abundant with possibility. But then the paradox sharpens. If life is so likely, why does it seem so absent? You feel the contradiction wrap around you like a quiet fog. The universe should be crowded, but it feels deserted. A gently fascinating fact drifts into your mind. In 1995, the first confirmed exoplanet orbiting a star like our Sun was discovered. It was called 51 Pegasi b, a gas giant locked close to its star, circling it every 4 days. Since then, thousands of exoplanets have been catalogued, and the number grows steadily. Some are rocky worlds in the habitable zone, where liquid water could flow. You imagine their skies, perhaps orange, perhaps pale green, clouds forming, winds shifting, landscapes waiting. Each discovery is like a whisper that Earth is not special. And yet, when you tilt your ear toward the heavens, you hear only silence. The eerie detail is this:
Even if intelligent life has bloomed elsewhere, you might never know. Distances are merciless. A radio signal from a planet just 100 light-years away would take a century to reach you. That means if a civilization sent out a greeting when your great-grandparents were young, it would be arriving only now. But what if they spoke 1,000 years ago, or 10,000? Their voices might already be here, waiting, disguised in patterns you don't recognize. Or perhaps they called out, but their signal has not yet reached you. It might be crossing the void this very moment, unheard, like a message written in invisible ink. You reflect on how strange it feels to be alive at this particular time. For billions of years, Earth spun in darkness, no one to wonder, no one to ask. Now you are here, and the question burns in your mind. Could it be that you are living in a fleeting moment of solitude, balanced on the edge of discovery? Or is solitude all there will ever be? You cannot tell. The uncertainty is like a lullaby, repeating, unresolved. Researchers still wonder whether you may be too limited in your imagination. You expect aliens to use radio, to build cities, to leave traces similar to your own. But what if their intelligence is utterly different, spread like a web across oceans of ammonia, or rooted in forests that think collectively, or drifting in the plasma of stars? What if they are here, but not in any form you are prepared to see? The thought unsettles you, but softly, like a breeze brushing past. You picture again the overflowing universe, the billions upon billions of stars, each one a possible lantern of life. The odds should comfort you, but instead they deepen the paradox, because if it is so likely, then silence is not neutral, it is peculiar, even eerie. You lie beneath the stars, and they feel heavier now, as if each one holds a secret it refuses to share. Your mind circles back to the shoreline image. You scoop another handful of sand, grains tumbling away. Somewhere in that endless scattering is a world like yours, where someone else may be standing under their sky asking the same question. Maybe tonight, two minds on opposite sides of the cosmos share the same unease. Maybe they too feel the overflow of numbers and the emptiness of silence. You breathe, letting the thought linger. The stars remain indifferent, but you no longer feel entirely alone. The paradox connects you, not to aliens, but to the wonder itself, to the quiet heartbeat of curiosity that has followed humans for as long as they've looked up. The sky is silent, but your mind is awake. And that is enough for now.
You let the numbers fade into the background, and now the silence begins to take on a shape of its own. Perhaps the absence of voices is not an accident, but the result of something hidden, something inevitable. This is the idea known as the Great Filter. It is not a wall of stone, not a single event, but a kind of invisible sieve woven into the fabric of existence. It whispers that at some stage, somewhere along the path from simple life to vast civilizations, almost everything fails. You picture a single-cell organism drifting in a primeval ocean, tiny and fragile, yet filled with potential. From such beginnings, life on Earth unfolded into forests, insects, fish, and eventually you. But the Great Filter suggests that at some step in this chain, the odds are stacked impossibly high against continuation. Maybe life rarely begins at all, or maybe it begins often, but rarely becomes complex. Or maybe complexity flourishes, but intelligence almost never appears. And if intelligence does bloom, perhaps it almost always collapses before it spreads far enough to be noticed. The thought settles heavily. Because if the great filter lies behind you, then you are rare beyond measure, one of the few to ever pass through. That would make you extraordinary, a flicker of life that survived where countless others did not. But if the filter lies ahead, waiting, then silence has a darker meaning. It could mean that civilizations almost always destroy themselves before reaching the stars. There is something eerily familiar in that idea. You remember the moments in history when humanity brushed close to catastrophe. The Cold War, the shadows of nuclear fire, the fragility of ecosystems bending under pressure. A quietly fascinating fact comes to mind. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, the world came close to nuclear exchange. One Soviet officer, Vasily Arkhipov, refused to authorize the launch of a nuclear torpedo, a decision that may have prevented global annihilation. One man's quiet resistance may have kept humanity from slipping into silence. It is a reminder of how thin survival can be, how fragile civilization truly is. You imagine other civilizations out there reaching similar moments. Maybe they too built weapons too powerful for their wisdom. Maybe their skies filled with machines, their oceans grew toxic, their stars shone down on empty ruins. Perhaps the quiet sky is filled not with voices, but with ghosts, echoes of civilizations that reached too far, too fast, and vanished. An unsettling image lingers, the ruins of a city on a distant planet, towers crumbled, streets empty, only dust swirling in alien winds. No one to remember, no one to send signals, just silence, stretching outward, indistinguishable from the silence of never having been. Researchers still debate whether the Great Filter is a true barrier or just a reflection of your own fears. Maybe you project your fragility outward, imagining that others would stumble in the same ways you might. But the question remains, is humanity's survival evidence that the worst is behind you, or a reminder that the worst is still to come? You let the thought spiral gently. What if you were living just before the filter, perched on the fragile edge of survival? The silence above could be a warning, not a comfort. Each star might be a tombstone, a memorial to voices that spoke briefly and fell quiet forever. Or perhaps you have already passed through the darkest danger, and the silence means you are alone at the far side of the sieve, one of the rare few to endure. The thought shifts like a dream. You cannot decide whether to feel hopeful or haunted. Still, lying under the night sky, you realize the paradox is not only about aliens, it is about you and the uncertainty of your future. The Great Filter becomes a mirror, reflecting your choices, your fragility, your resilience. And as you breathe in the silence, you understand why Fermi's question lingers. It is not just, where is everybody, but also, how long will we last? The stars shimmer faintly, distant and indifferent, and you let their cold light wash over you. Somewhere, perhaps, the filter waits, or perhaps you have already passed it, and that is why you are here, listening to the silence.
You let the silence reshape itself again, softer now, less like a wall and more like a veil. A thought unfolds. Maybe they are here, and you were simply not meant to notice. This is the zoo hypothesis, the idea that Earth is not empty or overlooked, but deliberately quarantined. You are part of a cosmic exhibit, a protected enclosure in which intelligence can grow without interference. The sky above you feels different when you imagine it this way, less lonely, more watchful. You picture yourself as an animal in a vast reserve, wandering freely yet unaware of the invisible fence. Perhaps advanced civilizations surround you,
their ships hidden behind cloaking fields, their signals carefully scrambled. They could watch the rise of your species with detached interest, cataloging your struggles, your art, your wars. Maybe they see you as fragile, not ready, still fumbling. And so, like a zookeeper peering through glass, they watch but do not reach out. It is both eerie and strangely comforting, because if the zoo is real, then the silence is not emptiness. It is a choice. Somewhere, someone is listening. You imagine them now, sitting in observation, their eyes, or whatever serves as eyes, studying your fragile civilization. Do they admire your resilience? Do they shake their heads at your violence? Do they wait for you to pass some unseen test? A fascinating fact comes to mind. In 1977, a strong radio signal known as the wow signal was detected by a telescope in Ohio. It lasted for 72 seconds, and it matched the profile of something not easily explained by natural sources. Yet, it was never heard again. For decades, scientists have debated it. Was it a stray reflection from Earth or something beyond? To this day, no clear answer exists. The eerie part is how brief it was, like a single knock on the door of the cosmos, followed by silence. If the zoo hypothesis is true, maybe it was a fleeting test, an accidental slip of sound before the keepers covered their tracks. You imagine how that silence might feel from their perspective. Perhaps they fear that contact would crush you, altering your fragile trajectory. Or maybe they are bound by some cosmic ethic, a law that forbids interference with young civilizations. Just as humans observe animals in the wild without disrupting their patterns, they may believe that you must evolve naturally without a guiding hand. The paradox then becomes not about absence, but restraint. Still, questions linger. If they are there, hidden, why not reveal themselves at least once? Why not whisper reassurance across the dark? Perhaps they already have. Myths of gods descending from the skies, tales of angels, spirits, or strange visitors. These could be distorted memories of brief contact, glimpses of keepers at the edge of the enclosure. Or perhaps those stories are only your longing reshaped into folklore. You can't know for sure. Researchers still wonder whether the zoo hypothesis is testable at all. Some suggest looking for anomalies, signals that cut off too perfectly, cosmic phenomena that seem too staged. But if the keepers are truly advanced, they could remain invisible indefinitely, hidden in the seams of physics itself. You imagine them like shadows moving just beyond your vision, always there, always watching, and never close enough to touch. You reflect quietly. If Earth is a zoo, then what does it mean to be the exhibit? Does it diminish you to think of humanity as something kept? Or does it make you rare, precious, worthy of protection? Perhaps the silence above is not indifference, but care. Perhaps you are not ignored, but nurtured in secrecy. The thought brings a strange calm, as if the universe has not abandoned you, but chosen patience. The stars glimmer as if listening. You feel their gaze more than their light, and you let the idea linger. Maybe the universe is not empty, but waiting for you to be ready.
The silence feels heavier now, but not absolute. You imagine tuning your mind like an old radio, the dial turning slowly, static giving way to faint whispers. For decades, humans have done just that, sweeping the sky with antennas, listening for something unnatural, some signal that rises above the background hum of the cosmos. You think of the vast dishes at Arecibo before its collapse, the arrays stretching across deserts, the careful algorithms straining to catch a message in the noise. Yet most of what they hear is only silence, punctuated by bursts of static and natural radio emissions from stars and quasars. The eerie thing is how loud the silence feels when you know what you're searching for. You picture yourself sitting in a dark room with headphones on, listening to the endless hiss. Every once in a while, a blip appears, a strange pulse, a repeating tone, and your heart lifts. But then it fades, explained away as interference, a satellite, a reflection. You wait for something undeniable, but it never comes. One quietly fascinating fact: the Milky Way is filled with natural radio waves. Pulsars, rapidly spinning neutron stars, emit beams of radiation that sweep past Earth like cosmic lighthouses. When they were first discovered in 1967, the signals were so precise and regular that some scientists briefly wondered if they were artificial, even naming them LGM, for little green men. Of course, they were not. But the thought lingers. How easily the line between nature and intelligence can blur when all you have is a signal on a graph. And yet a small anomaly still clings to the edge of memory. The wow signal you recalled earlier fits here too. 72 seconds of strength, too clean to ignore, too fleeting to confirm. What if others like it have slipped past, disguised in noise, dismissed as glitches? Perhaps the universe has already spoken, and you failed to hear it. The thought is both humbling and unsettling, like missing a knock at your door because you were asleep. Researchers still wonder if you're even listening in the right way. Radio is your method because it suits your technology, your understanding of physics. But advanced beings might communicate in ways unimaginable: gravitational waves, neutrino streams, quantum entanglement across impossible distances. They may be talking constantly, their voices invisible to you, like music played beyond the range of human hearing. You tilt your head to the stars, and it's easy to imagine them humming a song that you cannot hear. A reflection stirs. Maybe the silence is not a void, but a mirror of your limits. You expect aliens to use tools you recognize, to send signals in patterns you can decode. But the universe may be speaking in a language too vast, too subtle. The absence of a message does not mean absence of the messenger. It means you are still deaf to the dialect of the stars. You picture again the headphones, the endless hiss, the faint whispers that never resolve into words. You lie there with the static filling your ears, and you realize how easily silence becomes its own kind of sound. It is not empty. It has a texture, a rhythm, a weight. Listening to the universe is like listening to the ocean in a seashell, endless, mysterious, never revealing its source. And so you let the static wash over you now, like a lullaby from the void. You imagine the great dishes still listening, night after night, patient and hopeful. Perhaps the signal will come tomorrow. Or perhaps it already came 1,000 years ago, and you simply weren't ready to notice. The thought is strangely soothing that even in failure, the act of listening is itself a kind of connection, a quiet intimacy with the cosmos. The stars above you remain silent, but in the silence, you hear the faint hum of possibility, a reminder that listening is never wasted.
You feel yourself stretching across the void again, drifting further from Earth, as though thought alone were enough to propel you. The stars remain where they always have been, scattered like grains of salt across a black table, yet now their quiet light seems heavier, almost pressing in, almost whispering something you cannot fully hear. You turn inward to the numbers. You imagine the speed of light, not as an abstract limit, but as a soft wind brushing your cheek. If you could ride it, racing faster than anything you have ever known, you would still need 4 years just to reach the nearest star. 4 years of pure, unbroken travel, only to arrive at a sun so much like your own, surrounded by silence, its planets hidden, their mysteries unspoken.
And if you wish to go farther, to a cluster of stars that twinkle faintly at the edge of your vision, you would not measure your journey in years, but in centuries, in millennia. You realize then how vast the gulf truly is. Each civilization, if it exists, is trapped within its own island of light. They may send signals outward, but those signals fade, weakening, dissolving into the cosmic background before they can reach another listening ear. The loneliness of it weighs on you, not as despair, but as a deep, slow recognition. The universe does not care about urgency. It unfolds on scales far beyond what your mind can comfortably hold. The thought softens you. It becomes strangely soothing. Perhaps the silence is not silence at all, but distance. Perhaps civilizations flare and glow like fireflies in a summer field, but they blink too briefly, too far apart for their lights ever to overlap. You imagine this great meadow of the cosmos, dotted with sparks that cannot see each other, glowing alone, but still beautiful. And then you think of yourself, your own life, short against these distances. You imagine your thoughts as signals, radiating outward, not in radio waves, but in the gentle hum of memory. They drift through time, through relationships, through people you've touched, and you wonder if that too is a kind of communication, a softer one perhaps, a smaller one, but real. Your breathing slows. You picture messages that never arrive, words that never reach their intended listener. The universe is full of such unfinished conversations, but instead of sadness, you feel calm. There is a beauty in the trying, in the sending, even when nothing answers back. The act itself is enough. The stars seem closer now, not as unreachable points, but as companions in stillness. They shine without needing reply. And maybe you think you too can simply shine, letting your own light exist, whether or not anyone hears it. You sink deeper into this thought, letting it settle like dust in a shaft of sunlight. The unreachable distance is no longer frightening. It is simply there, vast and silent, a canvas for your drifting mind. And you drift further, carried softly toward the next mystery waiting just beyond the edge of thought.
You let your breathing slow, and in the hush that follows, you begin to imagine another possibility. It is not as harsh as extinction, nor as bleak as isolation. It is softer, subtler, almost parental in its silence. It is called the zoo hypothesis. And once you drift into it, you find that its quiet logic lingers like a dream that does not want to let go. Imagine that Earth is not alone. Imagine that our galaxy is already full of life, scattered like lanterns in a night that stretches far beyond your sight. But instead of rushing toward us, instead of flooding our skies with signals, these civilizations remain hidden. They watch, perhaps, but they do not speak. They observe, but they do not intervene. And suddenly, you feel a shift. What if humanity is not a cosmic orphan, but a child kept inside a quiet enclosure, being studied from beyond invisible glass walls? You think of a zoo. You think of how people wander between cages and enclosures, peering into the eyes of creatures who cannot understand the watchers. The animals live their days under the sun and the moon, building nests, chasing prey, raising their young, unaware of the eyes that study their every movement. To them, the human presence may seem distant, meaningless, or perhaps even terrifying when it intrudes. To us, it feels ordinary to look and not to speak, to watch but not to explain. And now you wonder, could we be the animals? Could humanity be pacing in its own enclosure, surrounded by civilizations who have decided that we are not ready to join their world? Perhaps they see us as too fragile, too reckless, too violent to handle the greater truths. Perhaps they have rules, the way humans write laws for wildlife preserves. Do not disturb, do not interfere. Let them grow in their own time. The thought is both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because it means we are not alone. Unsettling because it means someone might always be watching. You let the idea wash over you slowly. You imagine the watchers, hidden somewhere in the dark. They do not appear in the sky with massive ships. They do not send signals to your radios. They simply wait. They may camouflage themselves as the stars you see, or they may orbit silently in places your telescopes cannot yet reach. They may even have visited long before you were born, leaving no trace, like a keeper who slips food into the cage when no one is looking. You notice how the air grows heavier as you imagine this. You picture your life as if it were part of an experiment. Every war, every invention, every love story, every fall of empire, it all becomes something watched, something recorded by eyes you will never meet. What do they think of you, you wonder? Do they pity your mistakes? Do they admire your persistence? Do they wait for the day when you will learn enough to step beyond your bars? There is a strange tenderness in the hypothesis. It does not assume hostility. It does not assume conquest. Instead, it imagines patience. Like adults waiting for children to grow. Like gardeners tending a wild plant, trimming away the chaos just enough to keep it alive, but not enough to stunt its nature. You picture them deciding, not yet. Humanity is not yet ready. Let them quarrel. Let them stumble. Let them learn what it means to survive. The door is closed, but not forever. And this delay, this silence, becomes the loudest answer of all. Slowly, you connect it with the way humans treat animals on Earth. You think of forests left untouched, sanctuaries built to protect fragile species. You think of scientists watching primates in the jungle, scribbling down notes as the animals live unaware of the scrutiny. To the monkeys, the humans are invisible, just shapes moving beyond the tree line. To us, the notes are precious, evidence of understanding. And suddenly, you wonder, are we the primates of the cosmos, climbing trees of technology, unaware of the clipboards in the shadows? The zoo hypothesis carries with it a sense of humility. It whispers that maybe you are not the center of the story. Maybe you are not the peak of evolution, not the crown of intelligence, but simply one stage in a play much older and grander than you can see. You are learning to speak while others write books. You are learning to draw fire while others sculpt with stars. And yet they allow you the dignity of your struggle. They do not rob you of your mistakes. This is where the idea becomes haunting. If they exist, then every lonely question you ask, where are they, why won't they answer, has already been answered silently in their restraint. They do not answer because they have chosen silence. They do not answer because they already know that too much contact could break the fragile thread of your growth. And so you are left with a paradox of emotion, relief that you are not alone, sorrow that you are still caged, hope that one day the silence will break, fear that it never will. Your mind drifts again to the night sky. Stars glitter above, each one a possible home. You imagine them as windows, behind which beings lean forward, gazing at you through centuries of patience. You raise your eyes upward, and the feeling is strange, as though the universe itself has become an audience, and you are the play. Perhaps that is what the Fermi Paradox really offers, a mirror, a way of seeing yourself not just as a searcher, but also the searched, not only the explorer, but also the exhibit. And in that reflection, you find humility, you find stillness, you find the quiet weight of being observed by those you cannot see. You breathe slowly, in and out. The thought no longer frightens you. It becomes soft, like a blanket of unseen presence. Maybe, you think, the silence is not absence. Maybe it is care. Maybe it is patience. And with that, you drift deeper into the dream, where watchers wait quietly in the dark, and you, the watched, continue your slow unfolding beneath the endless sky.
You are still drifting in that gentle twilight between waking and sleeping, your mind floating across the vast stage of cosmic silence. The stars are still there, scattered like frost on an infinite window pane, but now a thought emerges. Heavier than before, as if the silence itself wants to press a secret against your chest. This is the idea of the great filter. A barrier, unseen but absolute, that may explain why the universe seems empty. Imagine a filter, not made of metal or cloth, but of time itself, of improbable steps that life must take to move forward. You begin with dust, swirling in a newborn star system. Out of that dust, chemistry must become biology. Out of biology, single cells must learn the strange trick of complexity. Then, those cells must collaborate into creatures, and one day, those creatures must learn to think, to build, to wonder. Each step is a doorway, but most are locked. The Great Filter suggests that almost every path is barred, that the probability of passing through them all is unimaginably small. And so you wonder, have we already passed the hardest door? Was the miracle behind us when chemistry became life on Earth? If so, then perhaps we are rare beyond comprehension, a single green spark in a dark ocean, survivors of trials that extinguished countless others before they ever began. If that is true, then the silence is not threatening, but sacred. We are not latecomers to the cosmic party. We are the only guests. You imagine holding a fragile candle in a windless void, a flame that exists nowhere else. But then another possibility stirs, colder. What if the filter is ahead of us, not behind us? What if the silence of the stars is the silence of civilizations that tried and failed to cross a final threshold? Perhaps life blooms often, intelligence awakens frequently, but something always stops it. Maybe technology burns too brightly and consumes its creators. Maybe war always rises faster than wisdom. Maybe there is a law of entropy written into the destiny of all minds, that self-destruction is inevitable and that survival is not permitted. If that is true, then the universe is not empty. It is littered with the ashes of failed dreams. You let this idea drift into you, slowly, carefully, the way you would sip a bitter tea. The Great Filter could be a reason for humility. Every discovery we make, fire, electricity, artificial intelligence, could be the step that brings us closer to that invisible wall. And yet, paradoxically, it could also be the step that proves we are stronger than the silence, that we can do what others could not. Each invention is both a triumph and a test. Your mind drifts back through human history, the fragile tapestry of civilizations. You think of ancient cities carved in stone, now swallowed by sand. You think of ships setting sail into oceans their builders could not see across at. You think of fragile treaties broken and mended, of voices rising in protest, of ideas spreading faster than empires. Humanity has always stood on the edge of self-destruction, and yet we are still here. Perhaps that is evidence of something. Perhaps endurance itself is our greatest invention. The Great Filter is not only about extinction, it is also about transformation. Maybe the filter is a choice to expand beyond the home planet or to remain vulnerable upon it. Maybe it is the leap from biological to post-biological life,
from flesh to something more resilient. Imagine civilizations uploading themselves into lattices of light, abandoning fragile bodies, surviving in ways we can hardly picture. If such beings exist, they may look nothing like us, and their silence may not be death, but distance. They have crossed the filter, and we have not. Yet, as you drift deeper into this thought, you sense how small and vast you are at the same time. A single heartbeat, a single planet against the immensity of the cosmos. The filter may be ahead or it may be behind, but its mystery does not demand fear. It demands awareness. The silence of the sky is not just emptiness. It is a mirror. It asks us what we will do with our fragile flame, how we will carry it, how we will guard it against the winds that may rise. You imagine Earth, spinning alone, a fragile dot of color. Somewhere, perhaps, a billion civilizations tried and failed. Somewhere, perhaps a billion civilizations never began. And yet, here you are, breathing, listening, wondering. This fact alone is extraordinary. Against impossible odds, life not only began, but learned to ask itself about its destiny. Maybe that is already a victory no filter can erase. And so, in the quiet of your drifting mind, you picture the filter not as a wall, but as a mist, a thick, unknown fog that most cannot pass, but that does not forbid you from trying. The future is not predetermined. It is an unfolding, like the opening of a flower in the dark. Maybe we will fall. Maybe we will pass through. But tonight, in the hush of your thoughts, the story is still unwritten. The silence is not an answer, only a question that echoes across the stars. You let that question cradle you as you drift deeper into sleep. The stars remain, the silence remains, and so does the flame you carry, fragile, flickering, and astonishingly alive.
You let yourself drift even deeper now, further into the soft corridor of thought, where questions no longer demand answers, but only gentle exploration. The paradox has guided you through shadows and possibilities, through the whispers of watchers and the echoes of vanished civilizations. And now another door opens before you, a quiet, solemn door, leading into the rare earth silence. This idea does not lean on fear, nor on vast empires hiding in the cosmic dark. It leans on the weight of rarity, the heaviness of chance, the possibility that life like yours is not just unusual, but nearly impossible. The thought unfolds slowly, like an ancient book whose pages have been sealed for eons. You picture the universe as a desert, endless grains of sand stretching out in every direction, shimmering beneath the burning stars. Life, in this view, is not a tide rolling across the desert, but a single, fragile oasis hidden among dunes that go on forever. The earth is that oasis, and perhaps there are no others. The rare earth hypothesis begins with a whisper, not that life cannot form elsewhere, but that complex, conscious, technological life is a miracle of improbable alignments. You begin to trace those alignments in your mind, one by one, as if counting beads on an infinite string. A stable star, not too massive, not too dim, a planet in just the right orbit, neither scorched by heat nor locked in eternal ice. A protective magnetic field shielding fragile molecules from radiation. A moon large enough to steady the planet's tilt, to calm the chaos of seasons. Giant neighbors like Jupiter sweeping away comets that might otherwise sterilize the world.
a history of just enough catastrophes, mass extinctions that wipe clean the canvas, yet not so many that the canvas is torn apart. You linger on each condition, feeling the precision, the delicate balance, like walking across a bridge spun of spider silk. At any point the balance could tip, and life would remain only as a chemical shadow, never blooming into minds that ask questions, never flowering into voices that wonder about stars. Perhaps you think the silence is not evidence of danger, but of fragility, not of predators lurking in the dark, but of deserts too vast, too dry, too indifferent. You might be living inside a rare bubble of possibility, one in which all the unlikely dice fell into place. As you rest within this thought, you feel both a shiver of loneliness and a quiet swell of wonder. To be rare is to be alone, perhaps, but also to be extraordinary. Imagine standing on a beach where the sand itself knows it should not exist, and yet there you are, toes pressed into its impossible grains. You drift further into this reflection. In your mind's eye, you see countless galaxies wheeling like silent fireworks across the dark. Each one holds billions of stars, and yet, if the rare Earth vision is true, the vast majority of those stars cradle nothing but sterile rocks, silent gas giant, frozen wastelands, and infernos of fire. The living silence spreads across them, an ocean without voices. And you, here, are the rare song, a trembling note in an endless symphony where no other instruments play. There's a strange comfort in this thought. The silence is no longer threatening. It does not hide malice. It does not loom with unseen hunters. It simply stretches, infinite and empty, as a stage where you shine as an unlikely spark. Your thoughts begin to spiral inward gently, tracing the accidents that gave rise to your existence. A comet delivering water, a strand of molecules folding just right, a fragile membrane holding the chemistry of life together, the slow dance of evolution, from single cells to forests, from forests to minds, from minds to curiosity. You follow this thread backward and forward, realizing how many times it could have snapped. Perhaps, then, the paradox is not, where are they, but how are you here at all? The greater mystery may not be the absence of others, but the improbable presence of you. The rare Earth silence suggests that the galaxy could be full of simple life, microbes in icy seas, bacteria in warm cracks beneath alien crusts, but that the leap to intelligence, to civilization, to wondering minds is a chasm so vast that almost no one crosses it. You and your world may have leapt it, others may never have. You feel a hush settle over you, a hush not of threat, but of awe, as though you are walking through a cathedral carved from starlight, knowing the builders may never exist again anywhere. Slowly, your breathing deepens. Your awareness loosens, carried along by the rhythm of possibility. You imagine the earth itself, blue, fragile, suspended in the dark, like a jewel balanced on the knife edge of chance. Every storm, every forest, every wave of the ocean is part of that impossibility. Every heartbeat, Every dream, every question you have ever asked is another expression of that miracle. And in this thought, you are not lonely, you are luminous. For if the rare earth silence is true, then your existence carries more meaning, not less. You are not a drop in a vast ocean of chatter, you are a spark against an infinite canvas. The silence around you is not emptiness, it is the backdrop that allows your note to be heard. As you drift deeper, you let the thought wrap around you like a blanket. You allow the silence to become gentle, tender, almost maternal. The universe in this vision is not withholding, it is simply still. And in that stillness, you find rest. The paradox continues, but here in the rare earth silence, you let the question dissolve into wonder. You do not need to solve it. You only need to feel it, like a tide pulling you softly into sleep. Your eyes grow heavier, your body grows warmer. The silence becomes your companion, and the improbable earth continues to spin beneath your dreaming mind. And so you rest. Rare among the stars.
You drift further now, deeper into the puzzle. The question of silence is still with you, but the shape of the answer begins to shift, and it takes on a darker tone. There is a theory, whispered across the minds of dreamers and scientists alike, called the Great Filter. It is not a wall of stone or of steel, but a wall woven into the very fabric of time, a silent barricade that stands unbroken in the path of life. You are asked to imagine the story of life as a long staircase. Each step is an improbable achievement, the first cell, the leap to complexity, the birth of intelligence, the spark of technology. Each step is rare, difficult, and precarious. And somewhere on this staircase, there may be a step so high, so unforgiving, that almost no one ever makes it beyond. That is the Great Filter. A single step that stops nearly every climber. And if the universe is truly quiet, perhaps it is because most civilizations fall before the wall. You close your eyes, and in the drifting silence you begin to see images of ancient worlds. A planet where life tries to rise from the ocean, but the climate turns harsh and the attempt withers. Another world where creatures gain intelligence, but fire never catches and tools never form. Another still where cities rise, but they crumble into war and ash before they touch the stars. Each one, another whisper, another ghost, another traveler halted before the filter. And then, in the quiet, comes the unsettling thought. Where is humanity on this staircase? Have you already passed the filter against all odds? Was the leap to consciousness itself the impossible step, the hurdle no one else could cross? If so, you may be rare beyond measure, perhaps even alone. But there is another possibility, the darker one. What if the filter is not behind you, but ahead, waiting, patient, inevitable? The thought curls through your mind like mist.
It suggests that civilizations may bloom, but some rule written into the nature of the cosmos ensures they do not last. Perhaps they fall to their own weapons, or to the collapse of their planet's balance. Perhaps they discover powers too great to control. Perhaps in reaching for the stars, they touch something that should not be touched. And in this dreamlike vision, you feel the weight of uncertainty pressing against your chest. Are you safe in this moment because you have already crossed the wall? Or are you only climbing, unaware of the cliff that waits above? Yet there is also a strange calm in this idea. If the filter is real, then every moment you live is a triumph already. You are walking on a rare path, one that most worlds never walk at all. The stars above you, silent and still, begin to feel less like an accusation and more like a reminder of fragility. That every breath, every choice, every moment of peace is carved out of impossibility. You imagine again the staircase, each step behind you a miracle, each step ahead unknown, and somewhere invisible the wall, the filter, the thing that almost no one survives. It is frightening, but it is also humbling. It makes you feel both small and extraordinary at once, a fragile traveler on a cosmic path with no certainty of what lies ahead, and yet still moving forward. And as you breathe slowly, the thought folds itself into the rhythm of your rest. The filter may be behind, it may be ahead, but for now, you are here, and the silence of the stars is not a verdict. It is simply a lullaby, carrying you deeper, softer, into the mystery of the night.
You lie in the drifting current of thought, eyes closed, yet wide awake in a darker, slower place where time folds in on itself. The story you are listening to has become less of a tale and more of a mirror, a reflection of your own breath as it flows in and out, like tides against the shore of an unseen ocean. Tonight, the question is different, heavier than before, because it no longer points outward into the stars, but inward, toward the shadows within life itself. It is the question of the great filter. Imagine walking down a long road that stretches beyond the horizon. The road is quiet, lined with trees whose branches arch over you like ribs, forming a tunnel of dusk. The air feels still, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You know that others have walked this path before you, but you cannot see their footprints. You only sense that something has happened here, again and again, something that has erased their presence. The great filter is that erasure. It is the silent barrier that may exist somewhere on the road of life, the point at which countless civilizations may stumble and never rise again. The paradox becomes sharper here. If the universe is fertile, overflowing with potential, then why do we not see its fruits? Perhaps because most seeds never grow beyond a fragile sprout. Perhaps because survival is not the rule, but the rarest exception.
You picture the early Earth 4 billion years ago, bathed in storms and oceans, a world young and unstable. Life clawed its way into existence, molecule by molecule, in the chemistry of chance. For countless ages, it remained simple, single-celled, invisible to the naked eye. Maybe this was the first filter, the immense difficulty of life appearing at all. If so, humanity has already passed through the narrowest gate, and the silence around us may only mean we are alone, the lucky lottery winners of existence. But the thought lingers. What if the filter lies ahead, not behind? Your mind drifts to other possibilities. Multicellular life is delicate. It might never have emerged. Intelligence is not guaranteed. Countless species survive without it. Tool-making, language, technology, these steps might be vanishingly rare, like sparks that almost always die before they catch flame. Each is a door that may remain closed for nearly every world. If the filter stands here, then our existence is a miracle. You, lying there in the stillness of this night, are part of something almost impossibly rare, a consciousness that beat impossible odds just to wonder about itself. And yet another possibility presses in, heavier than the first. What if the filter waits in the future? You picture a civilization that reaches our level of technology, able to split atoms, harness energy, build networks that spam the planet. But technology is a double-edged blade, and in its reflection you see both wonder and ruin. The same hands that write symphonies can build weapons that erase entire cities. The same networks that share knowledge can spread chaos and fear. The same hunger for discovery can dig too deep, too fast, into forces we do not yet understand. If the filter is here, then it may come as self-destruction, a quiet end, not by cosmic accident, but by our own choices. The road in your vision grows darker. You hear the whisper of civilizations that may have walked this same stretch, civilizations that looked into the sky with hope only to collapse into ash before their voices could cross the void. Perhaps they reached too far, too soon. Perhaps their greed or their wars or their indifference consumed them before they could take the next step. Their silence is the silence you hear tonight. You breathe slower now, caught between fear and awe. If the great filter lies behind us, then we are rare, precious, perhaps destined to wander into the stars as pioneers of life itself. But if it lies ahead, then every invention, every leap forward carries not just promise, but risk. The silence becomes a warning, an echo of paths that ended before they could truly begin. You imagine two futures split like branches of a tree. In one, humanity endures. We learn patience. We balance wisdom with curiosity. We create, but we also protect. We step carefully through each new threshold, surviving long enough to reach the stars. In this version, the silence is explained by our rarity. We are among the first, the fragile dawn of intelligence in the galaxy. In the other future, the darker one, we do not make it. Our story burns brightly, but briefly, swallowed by the same filter that may have swallowed countless others. The silence then is not just absence, but prophecy. The thought hangs heavy, but strangely calming too. because in either case, the moment you are in now, the rise and fall of your breath, the quiet pulse of your body, is part of something vast. You are listening to a mystery that no single human can solve, yet every heartbeat contributes to it, like drops of water that make an ocean. Slowly, your mind drifts back to that road beneath the trees. You realize that the darkness ahead is not absolute. There are lanterns, faint and far, glowing in the distance. They are not answers, but possibilities. Each lantern is a choice: to create instead of destroy, to listen instead of silence, to wonder instead of despair. The road may be dangerous, yes, but it is still open, and you are still walking it, step by gentle step. And maybe, just maybe, the great filter is not inevitable. Maybe it is not a wall, but a mirror, showing us the consequences of carelessness so that we might choose differently. The silence of the cosmos could be urging us, in its own wordless way, to survive, to prove that life can endure beyond its own shadows. The stars outside your window remain unchanged, cold and distant, yet they feel closer now, as if they are waiting not for aliens, not for messengers, but for you, for us, to decide whether we will become another echo or whether we will be the first to break through, carrying the fragile flame of life into a universe still hushed and expectant. The question lingers as your breathing slows further. Is the filter behind or ahead? You may never know, but tonight, in this dreamlike silence, you understand that the only step that matters is the next one we take together, carefully, gently, toward the uncertain light.
You drift deeper into thought, as though a soft current is carrying you through space itself. The conversation about silence has taken on a darker tone, a shadowy undercurrent that moves beneath the stars. You feel it before you fully understand it, a sense that silence may not be gentle at all, that silence could be deliberate, that silence could be fear. Imagine this. The universe is like a vast forest at night. Every tree stretches endlessly upward, every branch lost in shadow. And in this forest, each civilization is like a lonely traveler. They carry a lantern that gives away their position, their warmth, their presence. But the deeper the night, the more dangerous the light becomes, because somewhere out there, hidden behind the trees, others might also be wandering, some gentle, some curious, and some not. In this forest, the safest action is silence, to move slowly, to cover the glow of your fire, to avoid attracting attention. To live, you must not reveal yourself. This is the dark forest hypothesis, one of the most chilling answers to the Fermi Paradox. It suggests that the reason we have not heard from other civilizations is because every intelligent being in the cosmos understands the same survival rule: hide or be destroyed. It is unsettling to picture. You picture Earth glowing brightly in radio waves, television broadcasts, satellite transmissions, our little lantern held high in the cosmic night. For decades, humans have been sending signals out into space, small announcements of our existence, messages encoded with math, with music, with hopes. But if the dark forest hypothesis is true, then every signal is a flare shot into the dark. And in the dark, you cannot know who might be watching. As you think about this,
Your breathing slows. Your mind drifts into the metaphor. You imagine yourself standing at the edge of that vast, endless forest. The air is still. The trees press close. Somewhere far away, an owl calls. Somewhere nearer, a branch snaps under an unseen weight. You feel your chest tighten. The instinct is ancient, buried deep in your biology. The instinct to stay quiet, to move carefully, to vanish into the shadows. The dark forest hypothesis plays on that primal fear. It suggests that intelligence does not necessarily lead to compassion or kindness or peace. Intelligence, instead, may sharpen survival instincts. It may push species to act defensively, preemptively. If another voice is heard in the darkness, the safest response is to silence it before it silences you. A harsh logic, a terrifying one, but perhaps, in a dangerous universe, a rational one. You pause here. You let the thoughts sink in, because it explains something haunting. Maybe civilizations do not vanish by accident. Maybe they vanish because others make them vanish. Maybe the quiet of the cosmos is not emptiness, but the after effect of many silenced voices. The forest becomes a dream image in your mind. You see lanterns flickering here and there, small glowing lights among the trees. Some wink out quickly, others burn for a while longer. And every so often, a flash in the distance, the brief flare of something discovered, followed by silence. Now you reflect on us, on Earth, on the way we reach out with curiosity, sending probes beyond our solar system, attaching golden records filled with greetings and music, like bottled messages cast into the ocean. In our innocence, we believe contact will bring connection, understanding, friendship. But if the universe is truly a dark forest, then perhaps our optimism is dangerous. Perhaps we are the loud child in the woods, singing to ourselves, unaware of the listening predators. And yet, the thought carries you gently into another current. If every civilization hides, then no one will ever know anyone else. The universe will remain forever silent, forever lonely. No bonds, no bridges, no shared stories between stars. Just endless solitude. Is survival worth such isolation? Is existence without connection truly living? You feel this question ripple through you like a whisper, a balance of fear and longing. Perhaps some civilizations choose silence to live longer. Perhaps others, tired of hiding, dare to sing anyway, knowing it may be their final act. Maybe life's greatest tragedy is not being destroyed, but never being found at all. The forest lingers in your imagination. You can almost smell the moss, feel the cool, damp air against your skin. You picture yourself as both hunter and prey, both voice and echo. You sense how fragile the lantern in your hands is, a fragile flame, a fragile world. And you wonder, perhaps we are already being watched. Perhaps the silence we hear is not emptiness, but restraint. 1,000 eyes, patient and hidden, noting our every flicker. The thought is both terrifying and strangely comforting. Because if we are being watched, then we are not alone. Your thoughts soften here, as though the trees thin and the night opens into a clearing. You hold on to the image of the forest, of the lantern, of the silence. The dark forest hypothesis may be frightening, but it is also deeply human to imagine. It reflects our fears, our instincts, our struggle to survive in a world that has always been filled with both beauty and danger. And as you drift further into this quiet, you let the forest fade into mist. The trees dissolve. The stars return. You are floating again, slowly, gently, in the wide ocean of the cosmos. The silence remains, but it no longer feels as sharp. It feels like a blanket, soft and heavy, wrapping around you. A silence you can rest in. You breathe out, long and slow. The lantern in your mind dims. The forest grows distant. And in its place, the thought that maybe, just maybe, the silence is not only fear, maybe it is also patience. Maybe somewhere, someone waits until the time is right to step out of the shadows, to let their lantern glow, to meet ours in the open air of the stars. And with that thought, you rest in the quiet, floating, surrounded by the eternal dark.
You drift deeper into the dark river of thought, and the silence around you thickens. It is no longer the ordinary kind of silence you hear when you close your bedroom door at night. This is a silence that has been stretched across billions of years, a silence that wraps itself around stars, planets, and the hollow void between them. It is the silence of unanswered questions, the silence of all the alien civilizations that might have existed or might have been extinguished before they could speak. You begin to wonder, if the galaxy is full of possible life, why is it so quiet? The Fermi Paradox has always asked this, but now the question feels heavier, like a stone pressing on your chest. Perhaps the silence is not accidental. Perhaps silence is the natural state of civilizations. They rise, they speak, and then they vanish. What remains is only the echo of their absence. Imagine walking through a forest that once was filled with birdsong. The trees are still there, the wind still moves through the leaves, but the calls of the birds are gone. You stand in the clearing, listening, waiting for something that never comes. That is the universe you find yourself in tonight. A clearing without birdsong, a galaxy without voices. The silence grows heavier the longer you think about it. You wonder if silence itself is a form of communication. What if advanced civilizations know that the universe is dangerous, that to speak too loudly is to invite predators from the dark? Perhaps the silence is a kind of survival strategy, a cosmic camouflage, to remain unseen, unheard, unannihilated. You think of a small animal crouching under the brush, hiding from a predator. The stillness is life-saving. The quiet is a shield. And yet, as you imagine this, you cannot help but feel the loneliness. If the universe is full of life, but each life form hides in its burrow, afraid to make a sound, then the cosmos becomes a hall of mirrors reflecting emptiness. Billions of stars, billions of possible worlds, and each one cloaked in silence, waiting, waiting, waiting. You sense the weight of that eternal waiting pressing against your mind, like gravity itself. You close your eyes, and the silence becomes more than sound. It becomes texture. It feels like velvet wrapped around your thoughts. It smooths away your sharp edges. The silence is not empty. It is thick, layered, like a hidden ocean. You realize that in silence your imagination speaks louder. Without the chatter of voices, without the noise of proof, your mind is free to invent, to dream, to wander. Perhaps silence is not the absence of aliens, but the space that allows you to hear them in your own way. You think of your own planet, your own species, constantly filling the air with noise, radios, signals, satellites, broadcasts, all of them screaming into the void, desperate for someone to hear.
But perhaps the advanced beings are quiet on purpose, while you are still too young, still too restless, still too loud. The silence may not be abandonment, it may be instruction, a reminder that patience, humility, and listening are more powerful than shouting. What if the silence is not cosmic at all, but psychological? Maybe the universe does contain voices, but you cannot yet hear them. Like a dog unable to hear the high pitch of a whistle, you might be deaf to the frequencies on which life communicates. Perhaps their words ripple in dimensions you have not learned to perceive. To you, it is silence. To them, it is conversation. And then another possibility slides into your mind. What if the silence is a message? What if the absence of noise is itself a deliberate choice, the same way a blank canvas can be art, or a pause in music can create tension? Maybe the great civilizations of the galaxy have agreed, silently, to never intrude, to never impose, to let each world discover itself. Silence as respect, silence as freedom, silence as the purest form of peace. You realize that silence can be terrifying, but it can also be beautiful. It allows you to project your own meaning onto the stars. It lets your own imagination step into the gaps and create connections where none appear. The silence, in its own way, is alive. You drift further into it, surrendering. The silence no longer feels oppressive. It feels like a blanket gently laid across your body. It tells you that it is okay not to know. It is okay that the aliens have not revealed themselves. It is okay that the paradox remains unsolved. You feel your muscles loosen, your breathing slow. The silence is holding you now, and you're safe in its embrace. Somewhere, light years away, maybe another being is also listening to the silence, wondering the same things. Perhaps in that mutual unknowing, you are already connected. You do not need a signal. You do not need proof. The silence is enough. And as you lie there, floating in thought, you realize that this silence, this vast, heavy, timeless silence, is not a prison. It is an open field. You can walk across it, dream within it, and let it guide you to rest. The silence has waited for billions of years, and it can wait a little longer until you drift away into sleep. You are floating now, not in space, not in your bed, but somewhere between. The voice of the Fermi Paradox has followed you across this long, wandering path, carrying questions like lanterns through a fog. Each lantern revealed a possibility. Each glow was both comforting and unsettling. But now you have reached the final lantern, the one that does not answer, but instead teaches you how to rest with not knowing. The paradox has always been a mirror. It is not only about where the aliens are, it is about what you are, lying here in the stillness of night, listening, breathing, waiting. It is about why you feel that aching curiosity in your bones, why silence stretches out so far beyond the stars, and why it presses so quietly against your chest in the dark. You think of all the solutions we traced together, the great filters that may already be behind you or waiting ahead, the civilizations that may burn out quickly like candles, their light snuffed by war or neglect, the ones that may simply stay home, too cautious to wander, the vast stretches of time in which empires could rise and collapse, leaving no trace but cosmic dust. You think of the zoo hypothesis, the unsettling idea that perhaps you are already being watched, observed with the patience of gardeners. You remember the possibility that advanced life may be sleeping, dreaming in great technological hibernation, waiting for a future you cannot imagine. You recall the whispers of dark forests, where to speak is to invite destruction, and so every intelligence keeps silent. All of these lanterns glowed for you. None of them dispelled the fog entirely. And now, lying here, you begin to notice something else. Maybe the fog itself is the point. Because the Fermi Paradox is not a riddle to be solved in one lifetime. It is not a lock waiting for your key. It is a gentle hand pointing toward infinity, reminding you that the universe does not owe you answers. What it offers instead is mystery, vast and unending. Mystery that can cradle you if you let it. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the Milky Way above you, not as a collection of data points, not as a set of probabilities, but as a river of light. Imagine billions of stars stretching in every direction, their photons pouring down across the darkness, reaching your eyes after journeys of millions of years. Each star carries its own story, and you do not need to know them all. You only need to let them wash over you. There is a strange relief in this, to realize that you are not responsible for solving the cosmos tonight, to understand that the silence is not your burden, but your lullaby, to feel that the question, "Where are all the aliens?" does not have to be answered for you to fall asleep. You breathe in, you breathe out. The question hangs above you like a constellation. The paradox becomes less of a riddle and more of a rhythm, less of a puzzle and more of a pulse. Somewhere, perhaps, there are civilizations, and perhaps they are listening too. Somewhere, perhaps, there is nothing but the hum of galaxies, the crackle of ancient radiation, the cold expansion of space. Both are equally wondrous. Both can be enough. You realize now that the silence is not empty. It is full of potential, full of dreams, full of the sound of your own heartbeat echoing back to you, reminding you that you are alive, that you are a witness, that you are part of the story. Perhaps the Fermi Paradox will never be solved. Perhaps it will be solved tomorrow. But tonight, it has done its work. It has carried you across distance, across time, across wonder and fear, until you are heavy and quiet and ready. The lanterns dim, the fog softens. You are no longer waiting for aliens. You are no longer waiting for answers. You are simply here, resting inside a universe vast enough to hold every question, patient enough to wait for every dream. And so you let go. The paradox remains, but you are at peace. The silence holds you. The silence sings you to sleep.